Hello, and welcome to the Aether Community Meeting. Thank you for joining us. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available afterwards to everyone that registered. All participants have been placed on mute for the duration of the webinar. If you would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A module at the bottom of your screen to type it in. Following the presentation by GS Lab, we will conduct a Q&A session and try to get answers to all of your questions. Now, I'm pleased to introduce our first guest speaker from GS Lab, Vikram Bharate. Vikram is the engineering director for GS Lab, and he is also an Aether contributor and TST member. Vikram heads GS Lab engineering, investments, prospect, customer, and pre-sale solutions for telecom at GS Lab. Vikram, please take it away.
Thank you, Dennis. Good evening, good morning to all the joinees. So today's community meeting, we are going to cover various customizations and deployment success stories that we have for Aether platform and how Aether has served the industry so far through various industry needs for the infrastructure. So before that, let me just give a quick background about GS Lab and GAVS. So together we are 4,000 strong engineering team. We have very good presence in India into four major IFT hubs in India in Pune, Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Chennai. And we are in business for 18 plus years with serving more than 400 product engineering. We have very good presence in US as well on East and West Coast and in London. So the primary industry that we serve is into healthcare, finance, telecom, and high tech, which includes communications, networking, multimedia, and other product lines. And primarily what we do is we provide digital product engineering services, AI-led infrastructure management, and a lot of open source engineering. And ONF is one example of our open source commitment and building infrastructure and serving industry based on the open source. So before I go into the main agenda of covering various case studies and customizations, let me just a quick glimpse of Aether history. So I will start from the time when this thought of open source infrastructure was conceived, which was much before 2017 by ONF. And in 2017, we started a project at ONF community. So at that time, we had components called C3PO, which was overall 4G infrastructure developed in C and which can run on an x86, NG RTC to support gateway combinations. And we ground up architecture OpenMME at ONF. So together, this was the platform that we started to create the open source 4G LTE infrastructure, which then got added to the other umbrella of projects under ONF. So those are MCOD, RCOD, and ECOD. So MCOD there was mainly for the mobile code, the LTE infrastructure. Going ahead in release, in 2019, we made a release of release 15 compliant complete LTE 4, which had all the interfaces, all the components, and orchestration plus deployment automation for the entire infrastructure. As we progress, we made this entire infrastructure cloud native with Kubernetes support. So all deployments can be done on Kubernetes architecture with monitoring dashboards. And in that one, we created, we combined everything under Aether platform project, wherein SD Core, which started supporting 5G as well. So both 4G and 5G were available as SD Core. SD RAN was supported and SD Fabric. So together, this all came under umbrella of Aether platform with ROC support and OpenAPI compliant API support to manage the overall platform was added in later stages. A very well designed dashboard and DevOps CI/CD pipeline is later on added to Aether platform. So that's the journey that from where we started and where we are. So let me just cover a few things on Aether design principles. So when we started, when I showed the history, when we started very first, there were some thoughts that has been put as very basic design paradigms and guidelines that are being followed in Aether till date. So one was all the infrastructure that we develop or we are going to develop that has to be 3GPP compliant. So very strictly we follow the 3GPP specification, interface guidelines up to the protocol IE level. Another guideline that we had was the infrastructure that we are going to build has to be agnostic of the underlying infrastructure, whether it can be based on, say, your bare metal, VM container, Kubernetes, whether it's going to run on hybrid cloud or any of the public cloud. So whatever we develop, it has to be infrastructure agnostic. Testing has been a very intentionally focused here, and we made sure that we cover all the specification compliance very well. So Aether has gone through rigorous testing through NG40 from YIB, from Spirent, from DS Test, from Mobilium, from Polaris Load Tester. So these are all industry standard tools, and community has made sure that Aether has gone through very well compliance testing through these tools. Other than that, is being made sure that we are testing it with the radio device, the UEs and SIMs, to make sure that any compliance issues are not being left. And Aether is so far tested with more than 10 radio devices. From very beginning, the 2017 time it started, other than compliance, the base focus has always been on the performance and scale. Certain guidelines are being set, and even those are included in the CI/CD pipeline, community CI/CD pipeline, to make sure that Aether platform end-to-end achieves certain performance and scaling guidelines. Deployment agility was that came into the nature of the way we design. So you can anyone can just take entire end-to-end infrastructure, or we can just pick and choose one of the component and integrate with your system. And those are the cases we are going to cover in today's presentation. So let me start with the very first case of Cups gateway, where control and user planes being separated. So this is done for Amino, who is a very prominent member of ONF community. And thought here was to develop Cups gateways, the LT infrastructure with it, which will be completely 3GPP compliant, which is having very high scalability, because it was specifically targeted for IoT kind of devices. So to make sure it can scale very well, it can perform very well. So at right side you can see the diagram wherein we have implemented all of these interfaces which are required for this gateway. So some noteworthy feature to mention, there are CIoT, we had billing support, we added more than 30 procedures from 23401 and 23214 in this. Lawful intersection is added. The deployment model followed here was pretty much bare metal and VM based, and data plane is based on the DPDK. Entire LT infrastructure here, we also did deployment automation based on Terraform and Ansible, and this deployment automation is available under source code from Aether umbrella. So another next test case, next use case that we have is distributed deployment. When we talk about Cups, we need to showcase the distributed deployment, and this is the case that is created by ONF community and research partners. So when we talk about Cups, we should be able to manage all the centers and which are all the edge sites from some central location. So this is where we created infrastructure where edge sites are globally distributed, not only across the cities but across the continent. So if you see, one site was hosted at Menlo Park, one at Portland by Intel, and one was at Poland by DT. And all these edge sites were remotely managed by GCP, control plane hosted at the GCP. Many of the GCP services were leveraged here, and the edge sites were running actual different RAN devices with UEs and SIM. User planes were hosted there, and some of the applications like surveillance application were hosted there as edge application. This was a hybrid model where public infrastructure was used, private infrastructure was used, and private was pretty much combination of bare metal and VMs. And this is the Cups demonstration. Even all the interfaces between public and remote sites were following SXA and SXB interface strictly, and this was demonstrated around 2019 time. The next case study that I want to mention is about taking some piece of the open source component and integrating with other commercial infrastructure. And that is where success of Aether platform comes in, wherein we just took the S gateway and integrated with the entire infrastructure. So this is a case from one of the MVNO from European region, wherein they had their own LTE infrastructure design. They had some of the components developed or taken from some other party, and they were looking for S gateway C, which can be compliant with rest of their interfaces, other components, which can interop and perform at the expectation that other peer components expect. So that is where so the diagram here shows all the components which are available under Aether platform. So what we did for customer was we specifically pick up S gateway C as per their needs, and we implemented all the we customized all the interfaces S11, S5, S6, even the DNS part to make sure we can interop with all the peer components, and we were able to successfully complete the interruption and deploy it for the customer. All the monitoring, provisioning, logging were pretty much specific to their customers' infrastructure, and those were supported. Those kind of customizations were added in S Gateway. So this is the example where we just carve out a piece of overall infrastructure and make a success story for a customer. Next success story that we have is for MNO and MVNO integration. So this is one MVNO network provider from South America who provides network coverage for a large scale industry in the remote areas in hundreds of the acres. And they have their infrastructure already in place. They serve as MVNO and they have integration done with MNO. And they were looking to replace some of the components in their infrastructure from open source. So that is where we created a solution for them. So as per shown in the diagram, if you look at the left-hand side, that's the MNO infrastructure that this organization was leveraging. And on the right-hand side, the infrastructure of the customer that we have. So they already had P gateway and DNS, but they prefer to use open source, and that is where we took ONF's Aether's P gateway and DNS. We customize it. We make sure we're able to interrupt with the infrastructure from MNO. We customize DNS as well. Even HSS was something to be replaced, but there were some extra features required in the HSS which are not readily available. But we were able to serve this customer by providing this infrastructure and integration with the MNO. So next is a case for private LTE and 5G. I would like to hand over our architect in this overall journey, Amit Wankhede, to present this case.
Thank you, Vikram. So this is the one case study where the customer wanted to basically deploy the custom cloud native infrastructure. Can you move to next? Yeah. So the customer is basically a private 4G or 5G provider, and the basic use case was to deploy the 4G and 5G gateways as well as the S gateway, P gateway, and the MME. Also integrate this core with the custom platform, which was actually deployed in the public cloud. So the key constraints basically was to deploy this Ether core components on the public or private infrastructure, do the API integration with their platform, and also do the end-to-end testing with the real radio devices. So here's the architecture. So I will start with one use case. Like there were two, like one for 4G and one for the 5G. Deployment models were different. For 4G, basically they deployed the gateways and MME on the edge site, and this was the deployment orchestration was controlled by the customer platform. So API integration was done. So the orchestration, subscriber provisioning, policy enforcement was done from the public cloud. And there was a VPN tunnel established between this core component. core component and the customer platform. Another use case where the entire 5G core was deployed on the AWS EKS, so including the gateways as well. And also the API integration was done with the customer platform, through which they were kind of do the orchestration again, do the subscriber provisioning and the policy enforcement. So here, the main challenges we face basically about the networking thing, like so in the 5G case, like the G-Node B was residing on the edge, and there was VPN tunnel going on through the cloud. And so basically the data and control, both traffic will be passing through the VPN tunnel. So and getting the 5G UPF working on the cloud, and there were some performance challenges and issues we worked on. Yeah, so that's all for this use case. Yeah. So this is another variant of the 5G, private 5G and LTE, where the deployment was the hybrid cloud, where the edge cloud as well as a public cloud. They wanted to develop a platform, and the base was the Aether. Yeah. So, so this is the leading US connectivity service provider. So the use case was basically the deploy the Aether in a cups model and do the end-to-end cloud infrastructure, provide basically the high availability, scalability architecture, do the API integration with their custom platform basically, and do this deployment on the cloud native platform. Yeah, so this is the architecture. So on the central side, we use basically the GCP, the GKE module, where all the Aether control component and the SD core control component were deployed. And on the edge side, basically the edge cluster was done by the Anthos edge provided by the Google. And we help them deploy the Aether edge component, that is UPF and monitoring agent and edge app as well. So this was currently done for the 4G, as well as we have a plan for 5G. For 4G, the entire DevOps toolchain was also being done there. And we use mostly the open source tooling and as well as the Google managed service. Like for example, the deployment automation, we use the fleet management service provided by the Google. So everything is automated and it's code-driven deployment. So on the API side, the ROC provides an API compliant API. So the API integration was easily done with the customer platform, through which they were onboarding the subscriber and the policy enforcement was done by them. Also, we provided the bug fixes and the most related, the performance related stuff. So where we can, we tested this platform with more than 400 nodes, as well as 30K UEs. This is done with the simulator stuff. And for the basic thing, end-to-end testing, we have used the real devices. Also with the high-speed data plane. Also, one key thing here I wanted to mention, like the Anthos actually released the SRIV plugin. That was the latest addition. And we wanted to deploy the Aether UPF using this plugin. And there were challenges in getting this UPF, like the UPF doesn't support the KNA kind of interface, where we can provide an operational kind of interface where we can debug the networking issues by providing the ping interface or Linux kind of a interface. So we use SRI plugin internally, and we use the UPF in the air packet mode. Also, so without DPTK also, we got the optimum performance we needed. So that was the unique thing we did. Apart from this, we also provided the highest high availability, like for the MME, we used F5 load balancer, which was we deployed on the GKE. Also, we provided the component redundancy. So all the component, if any restart or any break happens, all the components are automatically recovered. So I think that's all covers this use case. Handing over to Vikram.
Thank you. I think we have multiple success stories. We just pick some which uniquely represent the different cases that are achieved successfully achieved using Aether platform. Some other noteworthy I will just mention are for one of the customers. It's pretty much we pick up one of the component in infrastructure, and we customize the interface. I mean, requirement was to not use 3GPP interface, but use their own interface and APIs, but serve all the 3GPP requirements. And we just pick up one of the components, customize it, and integrate it with the customer infrastructure. There's another case wherein we work with Canonical to port this entire infrastructure on Canonical's Juzu Charm platform. And we were successfully able to transform, deploy it there using the Juju Charm and its scripts. We also have one successful case study where we integrated this platform with MEC platform, and we were able to host and serve edge application hosted on MEC through Aether platform. So there are many such case studies, success stories that we have created for the Aether customers. So basically, when one point we want to mention here is to make this deployment and deployment and integration successful for these various case studies. Aether community and partner support is very available, and that is where GS Lab plays the key role. To make this deployment adoption successful, basically customer looks for a partner who is committed to this open source and who knows the open source infrastructure and requirement very well. And that is where the community support and community partners like GS Lab plays the key roles to make this adoption successful our customers. So going ahead, so I represented a journey for ONF so far. Let me just touch on the few of the points that community is working as of now for 23 and 24. So one interesting point to mention here is about sustainability and power optimization. Basically, we are working on all dimensional scale. So in case the current infrastructure with Kubernetes provides the scaling up or scaling down, wherein in case there is the increased load, you can just spin out the more components, or you can just close some of the components within the Kubernetes infrastructure. But very interesting development that is going on is specifically into data plane, where there is very high traffic and a lot of load going on. There are some plugins added in data plane wherein they will detect the load that is going on into data plane. And based on the load, there will be a time synchronization mechanism done with the CPU. And the power utilization of the data plane device will be controlled. So to give an example, at the night time, when there is very less load going on the data plane, it will be utilized, it will be detected, and according to the power consumption for the UPF will be lower at that time. So that's why I'm saying it will be all dimensional scaling, not only scaling for spinning out the multiple instances, but even the controlling power consumption for each of the instance. Release 17 features, UR LLC feature is actually requested by many customers, so that is in plan this year. NB-IoT is, again, there are a lot of requests coming from IoT deployment and NB-IoT support. We already have C-IoT support in gateways. We have the interface implemented from MEB to gateway user plane to support C-IoT procedure flows. We need to add some support in the MEB, and that is in plan. A lot of customers who are specifically MVNO or smaller operators, they are evaluating the code, and one feature which is mandatory for them or decision maker is online charging, and that is currently missing in the infrastructure. So this feature is in development in the community to support this customer base. So that's in plan for now. So as a closing note, let me just say that the Aether, as I mentioned in the presentation, Aether has been evolved through the technology progression so far in last years. And in this all the progression, Aether is being following the design principle that we mentioned initially. And because of that, we are able to serve various customers and case studies across industry. Basically, each of the open source users, they look at open source which is available at low cost to make sure they can focus on their business problems and rest of the infrastructure requirements are taken care by the open source. So Aether, its community and its partner are committed to serve this goal for the industry. Thank you. Back to you, Dennis.
Good. Vikram, Amit, thank you very much. I'm Timon Sloan with ONF, and I'm here today to sort of help with the Q&A session and sort of wrapping up. And so I want to remind everybody who's out there that there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and you're welcome to type in and submit your questions. And Vikram, if you would stop your screen share, that would be helpful. And let's get started. So a great job today, and I was really excited to have GS Lab here today. I don't know how many of you out there know the background with GS Lab. I mean, GS Lab has been involved with the the Aether project and the beginnings of the Aether project back from 2017, as Vikram was saying. I think in many ways GS Lab has been the unsung hero in the background with a lot of the work that's going on. GS Lab's engaged with a lot of the community. A lot of that early work started with Sprint and with Intel. And really has progressed, GS Lab's not sharing all the company names through because of non-disclosure and whatnot too. But I think if you come to some TST meetings and whatnot too for the Aether community, you'll learn and be able to connect the dots in many cases for a lot of the activity that's out there. So really great to have you here today. And I would say just my own observation is that the modularity of SD Core and of Aether you guys have leveraged in lots of ways. It's really a common theme that almost in every engagement you're mixing and matching pieces, both open source pieces, commercial pieces to craft custom solutions. And I think that history and over 5-6 years of that kind of history has really led to the strength of the SD Core and Aether architecture and the flexibility and also has proven out all the interfaces being really standard to PGP compliant, which is great. So I'm curious, and I see a question here too that you mentioned. It sounds like early on most of the deployments or architectures were really around bare metal or VMs, but that it's really migrated towards containers and then even towards public cloud. And I'm wondering if I'm really catching that trend correctly. I mean, is it the case that today that everybody's deploying on containers, or do you still see a mix? Do you still see people, engaged in bare metal type deployments? Out of curiosity.
Amit, you want to take on this? You're involved much on the container deployments, I think.
Yes. So the earlier in the initial part, mostly the deployment, like the operator kind of companies, they were more comfortable with the VM kind of a deployment. But as the evolution going on the container side, now I see everyone is doing the container-based deployment. I don't see any VM deployment as well.
So a real full shift towards cloud native. And then, but
Yes.
what about use of public cloud? I mean, sort of in that, I don't know if it was your last example, but the example we're using GCP in the public cloud. You seeing a lot of public cloud use, or is that more of a one-off right now?
Lot of yes. We use like most of the customer, like the AWS as well as one case study was there, right, on the Google. So most of them are into the public.
And then.
Sorry, so with VM and containers, so one point I would like to mention with reference to what Amit was saying. So 4 years back, with some of the community members from operators, I mean, they were very insistent on moving to VM than containers. And I think now the story has been changed, and the reasons were security and performance. And now actually, the story has been changed, and you can achieve all those results on the container. And most of the deployment that we are seeing now actually on the containers and still achieving all the performance and scale.
Okay, good. So a question here about somebody. They say they're exploring with Aether in the box, but that they've identified 2 network functions, AMF and SMF, that are talking to the Kafka bus and asking if there are other network functions that use the Kafka bus. Can either of you want to share a perspective on that? Maybe not. So I don't know.
Any idea?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So maybe that's a good question to take to the Aether Slack channel, perhaps. But you were talking about, so I don't know if this is related. I mean, Kafka bus is more about messaging, but I know in the latest release of SD Core, cloud native scale out of both AMF and SMF is starting to be supported. And you also mentioned an MME load balancer, I think, on GKE, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if that MME load balancing was sort of a cloud native scale out kind of.
Yes, basically the high availability thing, like in Google Cloud or AWS, there is no load balancer available in the cloud, right? Still, public clouds are still working on that stuff, and the only available option was the F5, and that's where we deployed in the Google to get the high availability for that.
And I'm sorry, you said F5, is that right?
Yeah, F5.
So you used F5, a commercial load balancer to front end the MMEs. Is that what I understand?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, got it. And just so everybody knows that, so then with the latest upcoming release of SD Core, the load balancer function is included for AMF and SMF. And
at that earlier it was not there.
Yeah, no, that's how these things progress. And so everybody knows too that sort of next on the roadmap too is load balancing and scale out for the UPF function as well. Okay, good. So curious about, you said a little bit about SRLV and AF packet and using hardware acceleration for performance. Can you share a little bit about what kind of performance I think you said you achieved your targets or something, but I wonder if you could be a little more explicit.
Yeah, so basically the link utilization, whatever we thought of, like the DPDK, the performance cannot be comparable. It's not comparable to a packet, but whatever the optimum link usage was, that's what we achieved. Like I think it was 5 GB or something Gbps. That's what we achieved.
It's about 5 GB. And so this was
per UPF.
For the UPF. So per UPF.
Per UPF.
Got it. Okay. So and this was on Google.
Yes. So yeah. So
right?
Anthos. Yes, it's Anthos basically that is residing on the edge side where we do the Anthos cluster. And earlier Anthos was not supporting the SRIV. So earlier ONF deployment was using the custom SRIV plugin. Now Google has released the SRIV plugin, and that's where we when we deployed with the DPDK mode, the ARC resolution basically that is not available as a feature in UPF. So that is basically we need to fall back to the static ARC, which is not scalable, right? For operational thing, we need a kind of a Linux interface so that we can debug this S1U and HCI interfaces. Like at the KNI interface we had, like in the Sprint Gateway, we had the KNI interface. So any Linux or Mac resolution, ARC resolution was done by the KNI interface. Something like that was not available, and that's what then we fall back to this AF packet mode, where we get the Linux interface so that the operational things can be debugged.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, so the journey of Aether, all from the very beginning was, as we said, kind of from bare metal towards containers. The cloud has taken off over this period of time. Also, the edge cloud, and so Anthos is one example of a Google edge cloud. I'm curious if you're seeing other deployments leveraging edge cloud. I mean, and Google or Amazon or Azure, and any more traction in that realm?
Well, not really. Actually, we are seeing some market trends there. Amazon is picking up pretty well. Google, but most of the cases we are seeing with Google or Amazon. I think Microsoft is more targeted to our enterprise, and this is a little different use cases. But the industry that we serve so far has been talking about AWS or Google for hosting into public or hosting into edge.
Got it. And good. So a question here about release 17 and what the timeline looks like for release 17 features and support. Can either of you speak to that?
Yeah. So timeline wise, release 17. So we are picking and deciding on the feature like your LLC or even one SNSF feature that is going to come in release 18. So it will be much feature-wise support that will be added. timeline is still in discussion in TST, but the key features are targeted for 2023 only.
Let's see. So as a couple of questions, I'm trying to figure out which one, but to stay closer to the feature kind of track of questions, lawful intercept. And what can you say about somebody who wants or needs lawful intercept? How should, is there lawful intercept as part of the SD core and Aether package?
Yes, lawful interception is implemented, is part of SD core, specifically into 4G CUPS architecture. It has, so for lawful interception specifically, when we refer to 3GPP, it has not given a very clear definition. So they have given guidelines. So if you look at the GTP or any other implementation, there are very clear guidelines given, or very specific specification detailing is given. Same is not given for lawful interception. So that is where we follow the guidelines given, and we took help from our partner, which is MNO, and we took their help on how the lawful interception they are expecting in field, and we took those guidelines and implemented, and that is available as part of SD core.
And is that in the open source repository?
Yes, yes, it is available.
Good. And let's see, a question. This is probably, somebody's asking about, an invalid memory error kind of question after they've been running. So I'm going to ask that individual. I mean, those questions really should take to the Slack channels, to the email channels for Aether Dev. You'll have access to a wider range of experts and, more appropriate place for those kinds of questions. But I have to say, it's great to see people who are online here are deploying and are getting experience. And so we're really pleased to see that kind of thing. So that is the end of our questions that we have here. Anybody else? If you fire in a second or two, I'll share that question with the panelists here. But otherwise, I just want to thank you both, very much, both for the work you're doing with the Aether community, but coming here today and sharing a little bit of a taste of the kind of work you've been doing, the kind of expertise you have and bringing to bear. Great to see the traction that Aether is getting, and all the different use cases where Aether is showing different success stories. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.